catecholamines, which is by intense exercise. So intense exercise is going to raise catecholamines, which is going to raise the HSL. You'll see that come up here in a second. We're going to keep the glycogen levels low. So a reduced carb diet and intense exercise is the key. So it's not necessarily no carb, but we want to reduce it because we got to keep those glycogen levels low. Maintain or develop muscle. We also want to lower insulin by keeping blood sugar under control by that low carb diet or reduced. Transport oxidation, so the next two steps. If the HSL is high, so again that hormone sensitive lipase, fat cells are going to break down into free fatty acids, which are then transported in the blood to the muscle where they can then be used by the mitochondria. Our plan of attack for this is going to be raise carnitine levels by keeping low glycogen levels. Again, we got to keep that low glycogen level. Metabolic training and reduced carbohydrate diet are going to be the main emphasis we're going to get with this. Hydration. We got to make sure that we're hydrating enough. If not, the kidneys are going to start to shift some of that detoxification from the process of burning fat into the liver. If the liver starts taking that, you're going to have a much, much, much slower process. So we're going to make sure we're hydrated up the entire time. There's high levels of mobilization, which was the first one, and high levels of oxidation, which is burning. We're going to have fat loss. All right, some hormones. Leptin. Leptin basically controls your feelings of hunger, satiety. The catch is that it's in fat cells. So the more fat cells you have, the higher your leptin levels are. So as you can see, as you reduce fats, you're going to start to lose these leptin levels, which actually makes it harder and harder to lose fat as you get less and less fat mass. Kind of the plan of attack with this is there's two ways. You can either maintain a stool caloric restriction, so a little bit of a caloric restriction, and we'll kind of get into the numbers here in a little bit, which is going to kind of suck, you'll see. Caloric restriction, and then rely on training to actually burn the excess calories. To me, why not just make training effective either way, and then you don't have to worry about it. The other plan is to have a cheat day once a week. The catch with this is you have to have a massive volume of calories and carbohydrates. So the way I like to have it really, I kind of recommend, is if you have, say, Super Bowl Sunday, Thanksgiving, something like that, perfect opportunity to hit that 1 day a week cheat would be perfect. The rest of the time, maybe you can do the other version. It's really going to be up to your personality and what works best for you. Insulin and IGF-1 is mostly responsible for that love handle and lower back fat storage. This is due to low insulin sensitivity. So if you've been eating a bunch of high glycemic and a bunch of just junk carbs for your entire life, chances are you don't have very good insulin sensitivity. So we need to raise IGF-1, which is insulin growth factor 1, and that's going to help over time increase that insulin sensitivity. Fast-paced circuits made a full body and combination movement, so kind of like a boot camp. If you guys haven't seen that yet, basically going in fast circuits. We'll kind of get into that here in a little bit. But getting those fast circuits is what's going to help raise that IGF-1, which in turn will start to get that insulin sensitivity right back there. If you manage the insulin, you lose love handles. Cortisol, stress hormone. Belly fats. Generally, I find over the years that most people that have fat centrally abdominally tends to either be stress, sugar, or alcohol. One of those three tends to be a little bit of insulin. Got to manage those, otherwise you're going to have a lot of that belly fat. It's going to be hard to get rid of. Cortisol production is encouraged by any type of stress. Physical to include exercise. So this is where we get a little bit of a catch-22 as well, is that you have cortisol production when you exercise. So now we're kind of in that whole thing. So how are we going to negate that? We'll get that here in a second. Specifically, steady-state cardio actually does the most damage as far as that goes. Now tonight you're going to see a lot of stuff that's kind of against aerobics and running and stuff like that. Keep in mind this is specifically for fat loss. If you're a triathlete, a marathon, or something like that, just keep that in mind that this is specifically for fat loss. So don't take it personal. This is just a science. Most mental, metabolic, dietary disruptions, alcohol, other toxic habits. So again, if your body is not cleansed out, if it's got a lot of toxins in it, you're going to have a lot higher cortisol. Plan of attack is to raise growth hormone. The benefit of training is that it raises both cortisol and growth hormone. We're going to specialize our training to ensure that it's raising growth hormone high enough that it's going to override that cortisol, basically negate it as best as possible. Sprint or lactic acid training. The sprint training doesn't necessarily mean sprinting as in running. It just means a fast pace. We'll get that here in a little bit. Estrogen. Predominantly responsible for fat in the hips, thighs, and chest and nails, the man boobs, which is not very fun, as well as general fat storage. So in general, females are going to have a higher body fat percentage because of that estrogen level. So the plan of attack is to raise testosterone. And ladies, don't worry, this isn't going to throw off your normal estrogen balance. This is just going to reduce the overall estrogen fat storage issue. Density training is a method that session after session, you're going to start increasing the total time or the total load. So if you guys have gotten into volume in your training here at IMI, basically your overall load, your volume throughout the sets, so your reps times your weight times your sets, either is more the next week or in the same amount of time, or you condense that time and do the same amount of work. That makes sense. So density training. Easiest way to do that is with supersets with periodized increases in density. Periodization is huge. The whole muscle confusion and you gotta have variety all the time, it's actually gonna slow down your progress significantly in fat loss. If you want fat loss, you have to get a periodized plan for 3 to 8 weeks depending on where you're at in your training career. If you're changing it up every time, your body doesn't know what to adapt to, so it says, screw it, I'm just not gonna adapt to anything. All right, nutrition basics. Our basics are consume protein, produce, and water every couple hours that you're awake. Very, very simple. And again, because of that high protein level that we're probably going to get by reducing the carbs or by upping our protein levels, it's going to make the body acidic. So we want to make sure we get high levels of vegetables. So we have a really good bias towards those vegetables. Any other carbs, again for fat loss, should be within 1 to 2 hours of exercise. So that way we can use it versus store it. Be sure to get healthy fats daily, especially saturated fats. You know, for the last 10, 20 years, people have been avoiding saturated fats. Saturated fats create hormones. Hormones, as we can see, have a lot to do with fat loss. And also, your brain needs fat. If it doesn't have it, it doesn't function quite right. So, what is the hierarchy of fat loss? Nutrition is number 1. Number 2 is going to be nutrition. It's that important. We'll get into nutrition and metabolism 102 once we come up with that next workshop. Number 3, activities that burn calories, maintain or promote muscle mass, and elevate metabolism. So resistance and strength training. Activities that burn calories and elevate metabolism, so metabolic or interval training. Activities that burn calories that don't necessarily maintain muscle or elevate metabolism, cardio / staying active. I go hiking all the time, or I go for a walk. Walking is great, but for fat loss, it's not going to do what we want. You'll notice that most people typically tend to start at the wrong end of the hierarchy. They tend to start with, I'm going to do some cardio. And then they move into a little bit of metabolic, and then they move into strength training, and then they're going to fix the nutrition. Optimally, we should reverse that and start with nutrition first. Theory. You guys heard this before? Creating a caloric deficit. In fact, we just talked about it a little bit ago. Fat loss industry started to recognize the need for specific fat loss programs. Didn't exactly know how to go about it, so we copied what endurance athletes were doing because they got lean, right? Or at least smaller. Hoping that somehow a training program for a marathon runner would work for fat loss for an obese, older lady, even when we cut it down to 20 minutes a week, 3 times per week. So 20 minutes, 3 times a week. But fat loss was never the goal of the endurance athlete, it was a side effect. You have to lighten your load in order to run long distance. That's why they lost weight. It's just a natural adaptation. So, speaking of running, I just need to run and lose weight. So, let's do a marathon a day for 6 days and see what happens. After 6 days, average weight loss was 6.1%, but 82% of that weight loss came from muscle. So what does that mean? As a percentage, you became fat. So you lost weight, but as a percentage, you became fat. Aerobics. So who's here the theory on this one? Addition of aerobic exercise will increase calories burned and therefore increase fat loss. So next, the fitness industry got in turned to bodybuilding. They're like, hey, you know what? We do cardio. Let's try that.